Good morning, everyone. It's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Before we get started, I'm just gonna let you know ahead of time that we have some construction going on in my house right now. We're getting some new floors, and that furniture back there is actually part of our bed because we had to pull our bed apart last night. And my husband basically moved a bunch of stuff into my office. And so you might hear some banging. They're ripping up our carpet. So, yay, new floors. All right. So, this is our favorite topic here, or one of our favorite topics on Without a Crystal Ball, where we talk about the Duggars. And while a lot of people in the media praise the Duggars, on Without a Crystal Ball, we are critical of this organization. And I call it an organization because the Duggars follow a extremely problematic and dangerous man called Bill Gothard, who is the founder of the Institute of Basic Life Principles, and he is a firm believer that women are submissive and have no other role in a marriage other than pleasing their husbands, giving it up to their husbands, and making as many babies as possible. So, Jim Bob, with his kids and his daughters, has always followed a very strict code in terms of modesty. Okay, and modesty is done because they believe that women dressing a certain way can cause a man to defraud them. I'm not even kidding. Now, what is defrauding? Defrauding is, oops, hold on a second, you guys. Okay. To avoid defrauding, and this is all from the Institute of Basic Life Principles, to defraud another person is to stir up in them desires that cannot be righteously satisfied. A woman can defraud a man by the way that she dresses, talks, or acts. A man can defraud a woman by improper touching or by talking about a marital commitment that he is not able or intending to carry out. Failure to safeguard your affections can result in disaster. If you don't settle this issue before temptations come, inevitably you will make choices that you will regret. As you choose to carefully guard against inappropriate emotional attachments and physical intimacy, you can avoid much heartache and pain, particularly in the relationship that does not culminate in marriage. Now, this is related to courting. But defrauding, no matter whatever direction that you look at it, defrauding is actually all about making sure that women dress a certain way, because if a woman shows certain parts of their skin, it can make men think improper thoughts, which would then cause the man to maybe do inappropriate things, which would then actually not be the woman's fault, the man's fault. It would be the woman's fault for having the audacity to wear anything that would make a man think about anything improper. So if a woman wears short shorts, or her shoulders shows her shoulders, or has her shirt on too tight, or has a V-neck or a tank top that might show some cleavage, all of that is considered defrauding. Defrauding is not okay. And if a woman were to, say, get assaulted or something bad would happen to the woman, it would not be the man's fault for doing anything. It would actually be the woman's fault for having the audacity to wear the improper clothing that is not modest. I'm not even kidding you. So this has been sort of what Jim Bob and Michelle have been all about since they started their incessant breeding, and since they began following Bill Gothard's Institute of Basic Life Principles. Now, a lot of people will say that the Duggars are quiverful. Now, they are quiverful, but quiverful simply means that that individuals on earth that are Christian will produce as many children as possible. And so quiverful isn't so much about all the rules, but rather abundantly having as many kids as possible. So yes, they are quiverful in that respect, but a lot of people that follow that same principle also believe and practice what Bill Gothard teaches at the Institute of Basic Life Principles, which should be noted that Bill Gothard is problematic because at least 34 women have accused him of sexual assault or sexual harassment, none of which of those victims has received justice for what he's done. Bill Gothard also gives advice about having children, and he doesn't have any. there's a lot of things about Bill that are problems. So Bill does a lot of things and sets everything up so that the man never gets in trouble, and it's always falling back on the women. Now, Bill has a lot of rules in terms of what he expects from women in terms of their what women should do for their wives or for their husbands. And in terms of this, he says, do not do things that would displease your husband. Be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good and obedient to your husbands, and that the word of God be not blasphemed. Respond to your husband's physical affection. Husbands and wives should be willingly embracing God's intention for their intimacy within a marriage covenant. And he writes, a man needs his wife's admiration. If you show a lack of respect for your husband's decisions, or if you resist his affection, he will doubt his ability to meet your needs. He may then be drawn to other women who demonstrate more respect and appreciate him. Demonstrate godly attitudes of love, loyalty, gratefulness, honor, and obedience when you appeal. Do not threaten your husband or make demands. If your attitudes are not respectful, your appeal will probably have little effect. Perhaps prepare yourself to graciously receive your husband's response to your appeal, whether it's favorable or not. An attitude of humility on your part makes it easier for your husband to share additional details or concerns that you may be unaware of that may be influencing his perspective. Now, he has a ton of what he thinks are appropriate and inappropriate ways for women to act. And here's the thing. According to Bill Gothard, it's all up to the husband to decide what the woman in the marriage can do. And so when Jim Bob was preparing to marry off his children, it became clear that he would no longer have the right to dictate how his children dressed once they got married, and therefore allowed their husbands to then make the decision on whether or not their girls would follow the modesty code that he had been implementing in his home since they had been young girls. Now, Ginger's husband, Jeremy, is really into fashion. He's like a former failed soccer player. He is not quite as fundamental as Jim Bob and Michelle, but he definitely holds a lot of very fundamental beliefs. I have a really bad shadow on my face. Anyways, and he is the kind of person that will allow, and I mean that clearly, allow Ginger to wear certain clothing. So since they've been married, she has been exploring and maybe even dabbling in new sorts of fashion, but most recently she has been wearing really, really, really short shorts. So since they moved to LA, she has been seen in a skirt for tennis. But this is really what got everyone going. She was seen in short shorts. These pictures were taken by Radar Online, and you can see that they are well above the knee. They show the mid-thigh just below her bottom, and they are pretty revealing. I mean, for most women, these would be normal 3 or 5 inch shorts, so they're not that short. But for a quiverful woman, these are about as scandalous as you can get in terms of shorts. And she's wearing them out in public, and she doesn't seem to be given a flying F. She's also been wearing pants everywhere. She's been wearing high heels and stilettos. She's wearing tank tops and showing her shoulders, which completely is against everything that her parents have taught her. Michelle has said, and Jim Bob have said previously, that they believe that from the neck down to their ankles, the girls should be covered. And they allow them to wear skirts that go below their knees, so theoretically it's not to their ankles. But most of the girls, like Jana, for instance, who is still living at her parents' home at 29 years old, you'll see her, but she wears skirts that cover her knee and are just below the knee. So her wearing anything above the knee and a short that literally cuts off at mid-thigh is ridiculously against anything that Bill Gothard instructs. In fact, there's a lot of other things that he would tell women to do. They need to maintain their personal neatness. They need to draw attention to their continence, and they need to like wear colors that match their skin tones. They need to manage their weight. He has an entire thing about staying beautiful for your husband, maintaining your outward beauty, practicing self-control in the area of diet and not becoming overweight. I mean, literally, that is part of his rules for women. And then this is actually what Michelle has said previously about modesty. She says, as we studied as a family, we found we could come up with our idea of what we thought modesty was, but we really wanted to see what the scriptures said about it. Our interpretation was that from the neck down to the knee should be covered. By keeping those private areas covered, there's not any defrauding going on. So this all comes back to them believing that if you expose your kneecaps, somehow a man is going to want to get jiggy with you or have improper thoughts and maybe start thinking about porn. I don't know what. And men don't have to follow these same sort of like standards, period. Like a man can kind of dress however they want. And if a man were to have those thoughts, it's not their fault. So Jinger has been taking a lot of steps to sort of demonstrate her independence, but I think we should be reminded that she has grown up in this cult, and so her independence with her attire isn't so much that she's being, again, I said this previously, she's being allowed to dress this way because Jeremy allows her to do this. We should note that Jeremy is still pretty fundamental in his beliefs. He's a very devout, very strict Christian. He is very against a lot of he's very much about the hierarchy of a man, a woman, and then the children. He's very much about traditional marriage being between a man and a woman, about the traditional family structure. He has a lot of still very problematic beliefs, but he's a little bit more trendy or maybe open to different ideas. But don't be fooled by the fashion, because the funded beliefs that Jeremy has are still there. It's just a little bit nicer, let's just say, maybe to his wife. But with Jeremy being sort of a, I don't know, metrosexual in a way, where he's very into fashion and I don't even know if that's a term anymore. He's very into fashion and he's very into looking a certain way. Jinger being allowed to dress like this is more a reflection of what he wants in his wife. And I hope that makes sense. So this is where I'm at with this story. And yeah, that's a really good point, Renee. When we sort of talk about how I recently watched a video from the 2015 scandal that opened up. Remember when Josh was accused of touching inappropriately his sisters, and how the family really sort of downplayed what he did, insisting that it happened while they were sleeping. No one was ever awake. It was over clothes, only a couple times underneath clothes, only a few times were they awake. And that Josh admitted it, and it was not their problem. And the girls almost seemed like they were protecting him. And that's directly coming from the Bill Gothard's Institute of Basic Life Principles, where a woman can literally never be a victim of any sort of sexual misconduct by a man, because it's a woman's responsibility to always guard her modesty. And so if a man were to ever attack her or do something, it's her fault. And that's why Josh has been sort of given all of these accolades and praise by his parents to a fault, and to a disgusting fault, at the expense of the 4 daughters that have been harmed by him. So defrauding and modesty has a lot of issues and is very problematic in so many different ways. And I hope by shedding some light on this, I can help you understand why sometimes I'm pretty hard on these people, as well as why I'm hard on the media when it comes to these people. Because in 2019, a woman should never feel like what she wears has anything to do with a man's decisions to do something. And I'll say this very honestly, I was raped in 2007, and when I was raped, a lot of questions came up with, what was I wearing? Did I drink too much? Did I ask for it? Did I initiate something? Did I make him think something? And so this modesty culture might seem over the top, but it actually permeates into our wider culture in terms of how we and how police even investigate crimes of rape against that are perpetrated against women, it's almost always the victim's fault. My perpetrator was never prosecuted because they believed him and not me because I was drugged. And again, did you do that? What were you wearing? That's really questions that are asked. So why I fight out against this is because we need to get past this whole antiquated idea that anything that a woman wears bears any responsibility for anything that a man would do to her. And women should be able to do and wear whatever they want. And my goal, and I'm going to share this again, is I had this really funny dream last night. I don't know if it's so funny, but I always dream that I like live with the Duggars, and it's like my goal to help them sort of break the chains. And in my dream last night, there was a daughter named Jennifer, and it's not the same Jennifer that like just turned, I don't know, 12, but she was older and she was like courting someone, and she broke the courting off to go to college to study engineering, and then went to the doctor's office, admitted that she had been sexually active, and then got screened for all kinds of STIs. And it was literally the most proud I'd ever felt of a Duggar. Now, I know it's not true, but in my brain, there's got to be one of these girls that's going to break free. Jinger is on her way, but she's not there yet because she's still married to a man that is extremely troublesome. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've been part of the modesty world, let me know. I'm always here to open and honest to hearing anything that you have to say. I will be back later with some more information, and we're going to talk and break down what's going on with Aaron Carter. I'm not going to be going at Aaron Carter, but rather sort of discussing like how did we get to this spot? Is this all a product of his working as a child? All right, you guys, I'll be back later. Bye.